Hey everyone, this is Mike. I just got back from Nerdtacular 2015 yesterday, and just going to be giving a quick wrap up and retrospective of this year's event. It was awesome, as it always is. I went out there on Wednesday. I always fly out the Wednesday before, so got into Salt Lake City maybe like 10:45, maybe around 11. Got up to Snowbird by 11:30. The first thing I always do when I get to Snowbird, because I only do it the one time, is I'll go to the pool for like half an hour. Did that, came back, got changed, went downstairs to the Mexican restaurant, and when I got there, Adam from the Mattcast and Todd, my co-host on the Magic the Gathering podcast, were there just having some lunch. So I joined them for a little bit. Just a few minutes later, Patrick Beja and Terpster showed up, and we just started to eat and have a long conversation about various video game things. And it's always cool when you get Patrick and Terpster into a conversation because they generally will have very, very different views on various topics, and they don't always agree on stuff, which is great because they both raise awesome points. I think we stayed out there for it was probably 12 to like about 5 o'clock, so 5 hours. I ended up getting pretty sunburned because I actually forgot to one pack sunscreen and two, even if I had packed sunscreen, I didn't expect to be out there for 5 hours, and I didn't really want to leave the conversation because it was a really good conversation with a lot of awesome people. More people started showing up. More people from like Colorado that I've met in the past were there. It's always great to see them, and more people that I've met in the years past showed up as well. That night, I didn't do much that night. I was just walking around, just hanging out, talking to everybody, or all the people that had shown up early. So got to bed, not super early, but maybe it was probably around midnight that night, which is early for a Nerdtacular. Next day, I was part of the volunteer team. We put the bags together. So if we're at Nerdtacular and you got a bag, those were put together by myself and a bunch of other people. We had like a assembly line going. I was doing stickers and those mini prints, and then handing them off, and then they would get put into the bags. That was fun. Thursday, I also helped cut up the posters that you saw hanging around the convention center or the ballroom and right outside the ballroom. So all the Scott Johnson prints that were there, I helped hang some of those. And Thursday, we also had the reception where I was guiding people upstairs because it was in a different area this year. Normally we have it in, I think it's called the Golden Cliff, but that was rented out by had another conference going on in there. So we were upstairs in this outdoor tent. It was really nice. Weather was pretty nice, so went up there. Saw people that I've seen before. Got to talk to Tom and Veronica, and Brian and Justin were up there, and also some new people that haven't been to Nerdtacular before. It was awesome to meet Anthony Carboni and Jeff Kanata. Talk to them. I've been a big fan of theirs for a while, like with Jeff with like Totally Rad Show, and Anthony with the indie. I think it was called Free Indie Rapid Fire. I think it was on Bite Jacker on Revision 3, stuff like that. Talked to them for a little bit. Then it was the third annual Smoke Monster put on by Mitsula. So big thanks to Mitsula for putting that together again. It's always fun. I smoke one cigar a year, and it's always at this event. And then it's just a nice event to casually talk to anybody that's there. Chris Metzen was there. I actually didn't see Chris Metzen that night, but talked to a bunch of other people. I talked to Joey Image was there as well. I talked to him and Justin for a while because we had a wrestling panel this year. So we were just discussing what we were going to talk about there. And also they do the odds. Mitsula does the odds on the Frog Pants All-Stars and reads those off, and that's always fun. Got to bed. I think Joey Image and I and a few other people were the last people actually out of the Smoke Monster. I think I got back to my room and got to sleep at maybe like 2:30 in the morning that night. So the next day, Friday, was the first main event day. We had the live TMS, which was great. There was other stuff going on that day as well. I went to a couple of the other panels that they had going on. I went to the board game panel. I think was the next one that I went to was in one of the main ballrooms. It was awesome. They had a bunch of people from Major Spoilers there. It's always nice to see Steven again. I've seen him at all the Nerdtaculars that I've been to from 2011 until this one. And a couple people from Cryptozoic were up there, as well as Jeff Canado was up there as well. And this is where things kind of took a weird turn. The event was still awesome, so I was just checking my phone, checking the time actually, because right after this board game panel was our wrestling panel, and we were upstairs in one of the new ballrooms that they had built since the last since last year, because that area was under construction last year, and it was now a I guess it's a two-part ballroom, and it can also be opened up into one big ballroom, and that's upstairs right next to the registration desk. So I'm checking my phone, checking on Twitter, and then I see all these tweets, not directed at me, but just tweets in my timeline about Rowdy Piper passing away. And this was literally like 5 minutes before I had to leave to go to our wrestling panel. So I walk upstairs. I had to leave the board game panel a little early to make sure I was in the area I needed to be in and make sure we were set up. But go upstairs into one of the lobbies. Justin Robert Young is up there, and we just look at each other and we're just like, yeah, you saw the news, right? And then that's how we opened the wrestling panel. So we headed over to the wrestling panel. Jury and I were there, and then Joey showed up. The panel was awesome. I want to thank everybody for coming out and supporting the panel. We probably had about 20 or 30 people in there. I wasn't really counting, but it was more than we thought we would get, and we just had a great conversation about professional wrestling. We took questions from people that were there. It was fun answering the questions. We really had no format to do it, so we just pretty much called it in the ring. But our opening story was about Rowdy Piper, and then we discussed some of our favorite Rowdy Piper moments. I think the one I mentioned was his 1996 run in WCW, or it was like 96 to 97. And I think he was there for a few years, but it was when he showed up and challenged Hogan to a match at Starrcade that year. And then he won that match, but the NWO, wouldn't allow people to play the video of the match and things like that. So we talked about wrestling for probably, I think each of these panels was about an hour. I picked up one of the Joey Image DVDs. I'm just going to go grab that really quick. Bought one of these awesome DVDs. I started watching it last night. I'm in the first disc right now, which is an awesome interview that Joey Image does, and then the second disc is all the matches. So if you were there and you got one, I hope you like them. It's an awesome, and it's also signed. So I want to thank Joey Image for letting me buy this. I remember when he first announced that he was doing a DVD. I think he said it was just for himself, and then I was just like, well, I'll buy one, and then everybody wanted one. He gave away some shirts. It was pretty cool. And then I want to thank everybody that came out for that panel. We were up against some pretty stiff competition. I think we were up against Sword and Laser. We were up against We Have Concerns with Anthony and Jeff. We were also up against Scott Johnson and his comic panel, like a comic book panel. So a lot of stiff competition, and I think based on the competition that we did have, we got a pretty good turnout. I really want to do another one of these panels again in the future. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. Maybe have some more people there that are actually on the panel, because this year it was just the three of us, and it would be cool to have other people from in and around the Frog Pants and Diamond Club communities, lending their opinions to what we were talking about. After that, it was a break. So I actually did a Magic the Gathering draft that afternoon. I've never actually drafted before. I know of drafting and how you do it. I just have actually never done one. So we did a Magic the Gathering draft. I don't think we ended up finishing the actual tournament, but I got a few rounds in and made it was a black-green elf deck mostly. There were some zombies in there because when you're drafting, you don't have access to every single card in the set. You just have to work with what you're given. And I didn't win any of the rounds I did, but I won a couple of the individual matches by just having a lot of elves out and that were able to swing for a lot of damage. That was a lot of fun. Next up was the Marion Call concert, which was really, really cool. Yeah, I think I broke it up into like two sets. I picked up one of her CDs as well, which I'll grab that as well, actually. So this was that's not it. This was the CD I got from her live in Europe. I actually haven't got to listen to it yet because I just unpacked it. But I'm gonna listen to this later today. Probably put it into iTunes, things like that. I also picked up a couple other CDs. I picked up the new Andrew Allen album, Live from the Cantina, which I backed on Kickstarter. As whenever him and Brian do these albums, I always back it. I've backed all. I think this is his fourth. Yeah, there's Smooth Iteration, Free Play, Secret Identity, and now Live in the Cantina, the Star Wars album. And Same Sex Mary was there again this year, and I picked up their new CD as well. I have their first, I don't know if it's their first, but the last album that they released on Kickstarter, I have that on vinyl. So awesome music. Marion Call had an awesome concert. We were just hanging out down in like the lobby for a while, just talking. I don't think I actually ran into her. Actually, got to talk to her until the next day, but I was hanging out with a bunch of other people for a while. Went back up to the game room, played some more in the Magic draft, and of course jumped into some games of Cards Against Humanity, where I actually had to leave early because I ended up leaving the game room at like 2:30 in the morning and not getting to sleep until 3, and then we still had a whole another day ahead of us. So play some Cards Against Humanity. We were actually playing with the Rando Calrissian rule, which I've actually not used before. I know of it because it's in the rulebook, but it's everybody plays their cards, and then you drop a random white card into the pile of answers, or multiple white cards if it's a multiple part question, and then the judge will read them all. He or she will pick which one is their favorite, and usually people will be like, "Oh, that's my card," and they'll get the black card as a point. And if the Rando Calrissian wins, it's kind of funny because everybody's like, the judge will be like, anybody, whose card is this? And then it's just funny when the random card ends up being the best answer. So we played there for a while, went back into my room, went to sleep at I probably didn't get to sleep until like 3. Woke up the next day for the live film sack, which they did The Punisher, and that was awesome. I've only watched the movie one time, and I didn't watch it again for this, but I remember watching it on TV and just thinking it was really bad. This was maybe like 10 years ago or so, at least. It was like on TBS or TNT or one of those channels. Live film sack was awesome, especially the scene where Louis Gossett Jr. bumps into the guy carrying a pizza and then grabs the pizza off the floor and eats it. Pretty funny. Always, like, the film sack is always great. Oh, and I also skipped over Friday, the big panel between the board gaming panel and TMS was a live instance in the main ballroom with Scott, Randy, Russell Brower, Chris Metzen, Terpster, and Patrick, and that was just great. And it was kind of funny whenever people would ask Chris a specific question about what's coming next. He really couldn't answer a lot of that, but it was funny, especially when Scott played the Warcraft movie trailer, or like if you watch the panel, you know what I'm talking about. Starts off all professional, and then you get something different. I'm not going to spoil it. It should be on. I believe the entire panel is up on YouTube on Alpha Geek Media if you want to watch that. So again, Warcraft panel was great. Hanging out with Chris Metzen and Russell Brower again is always a pleasure. Russell's been there the last. This is his 3rd time. This is Chris Metzen's 1st time. And like I said, I didn't get to run into Chris Metzen at the Smoke Monster, but I did run into him Friday morning right before TMS started, and we just chatted for a while. And I told him, I've been playing Blizzard games since. Well, I think the first Blizzard game I may have played was Rock and Roll Racing on the Super Nintendo, but the Blizzard proper game, the first one I played, I think, was Warcraft 2, and this was like 94. And then, I got into Diablo after that, and I had to even get a new PC built to play Diablo because Warcraft ran on like an old 486, and then in 1997, like shortly after Diablo came out, I got a Windows 95 PC, which was able to play Diablo. And then, Diablo, and then StarCraft, Diablo 2, World of Warcraft, and all the way up through, Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone and Overwatch whenever that comes out. He was just really fun to talk to. We talked about storytelling in games, and also, since I was doing the wrestling panel, I started to talk about, how, like, you can break down wrestling storylines into the same core elements that you do a Warcraft storyline. Like, a lot of the Warcraft storylines, like, the really good ones, basically are built on just a couple very basic story building blocks. So just talking to him about that was awesome. Again, now back to Saturday. Technically, Saturday morning. We're live film sack is over. We're just walking around. I forget what. And then they had Current Geek panel was on Saturday as well. Originally, the wrestling panel was going to be, I believe, at like 2:30 to 3:30 on Saturday, and so we ended up switching with Grumpy Cast. This Grumpy Cast was going to go Friday afternoon at 4:30, so we switched with them so Justin could be part of the Angry Chicken panel that was happening Saturday afternoon. So go to the Current Geek panel. I was invited to write questions for Tom and Scott, and it was a huge honor to be wasn't on stage, but I was on the like little podium area reading trivia for Tom and Scott. It was really a lot of fun because I've told them this. I've told probably many people this, but Current Geek was the first show that I had listened to that was produced by Scott. I actually listened to that before I listened to The Instance. I had been listening to Tom for a while on CNET and a few other things, and I think he may have plugged Current Geek on another one of his shows. So I was like, that sounds like something interesting. So I found that, and this is when it was 3 times a week, like 10 or 15 minute episodes, like on I think it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They would put out like a bite-sized episode for 3 days a week, and then eventually they did the weekly thing. So being up there with them was awesome. It was fun to read them trivia that Scott, I think, asked. Tom's questions were like British history when it was controlled by Rome, and Scott's category was video game history. And of course, if you've ever seen Current Geek, Tom has a very complex, and there's like a big history about how he scores these quizzes. And I think I scored it as he would have scored it on Current Geek. So again, I want to thank them for inviting me up for the panel. That was a huge highlight for me. That and the wrestling panel were probably my two favorite things. After that, they did the Frog Pants All Stars, which is always awesome. Brian Ibbett comes up with some awesome categories. I think my favorite one this year, well, movie poster taboo is probably my favorite from the years past, and this year too. But the new category of where he took scenes from movies and stripped the music out and replaced the music with something else was a lot of fun. I managed to get a few of them right. I always try to play along when they do this. And during the movie poster taboo part, I'll actually actively just like look down at the ground and try to listen to the clues. And I ended up getting probably most of the posters correct. I think the funny thing is, when Brian reads the rules, he says these movies are from the top of the Netflix popularity list, which generally means the film is rather new or somewhat new, like probably came out last year. So I think the team captains maybe get a little flustered and forget that these movies are newer. So they're guessing stuff that's kind of old. So I think if they just remember that their posters are from newer films, they might get more of them correct. But it's always fun when they have when they're throwing out these weird not rules, but these weird terms for the films that almost make no sense unless you're actually looking at the poster. So sometimes you'll get a really funny description of the movie that is either very like spot on to the movie or really far off. It's pretty funny. So the Frog Pants All Stars went. There was 3 rounds, so it was 4 teams. They each played one game, and then the winners went on to play another game. After that, they had the costume parade, which was pretty fun. This is the first year I've actually done a costume. I actually did 2 this year. I did one for the wrestling panel, and I did CM Punk for the wrestling panel, and the next one I did the black plastic bag monster that killed Tasha Yar in Star Trek: The Next Generation. So it would have probably looked better had I had black pants on. I don't have any black pants. So, but what I did was I just took a big, large plastic. They're called contractor bags. It's basically just like a really heavy duty trash bag. Cut 3 holes in it, one for my eyes and 2 for my arms. Put on a long black sleeve shirt and went out as that plastic bag monster. I think his name is Armis. If you look him up on Memory Alpha, that's the Star Trek wiki. Just look up Armis and you'll see the character. And whenever he's mentioned on like TMS or any of the other Fraud Pants shows, Scott always mentions him as like the melted trash bag that killed Tasha Yar. So I didn't even write Armis down when I signed up. But I think a lot of people got the joke, so that was a lot of fun. Then it was more board games. After that, they brought all the board games and tables into the main ballroom, and just people were playing games pretty much up there until slightly after midnight. I played a couple new games. I played the first one I knew the rules of, but I've actually never played it. Was Sushi Go. I know it's a card drafting game, and then you score points based on what cards you play in front of you, and some you need to have multiples of to get points. Some score points based on whoever has the most of them, and things like that. That was a lot of fun. And then the new game that Buckeye Fitzy brought over was, I think it was called Edison versus Tesla or Tesla versus Edison. I'm not exactly sure which order that goes in, but it was a kind of like a resource, I guess resource management is part of it. But you have like tech research you need to do. You have there's like stock market aspects to it. and building aspects to it, kind of like Ticket to Ride, where you build up technology, you research technology in either AC, AC or DC, like the electricity, and then you can build projects in various cities based on what level of that energy you have. So if you have a level 1 in DC, you can build in a level 1 project in any city that you have DC in. So if I have level 1 DC, I can play a level 1 DC project. If I have level 1 AC, I can do the same. And then you have other luminary cards that will help you out. So, for example, I played as Tesla, and Tesla has no money bonus. So my second luminary was JP Morgan, who, whenever I build a project, reduces that project by $2,000. Normally, I think it's like 4,000. At least when you start, it's 4,000 per project. And if I just play Tesla to build a project, I'd be paying 4,000. But since I used JP Morgan to build a project, he subtracted it by 2,000. So you can do that. You also have propaganda you can play, which will change the turn order. You can also change the popularity of whatever electricity you're working on. So I was working in DC. So whenever I had the opportunity to use propaganda, I would make DC a more favored energy. And then you get bonuses to your stock based on how popular that energy is. And then there's also, like I mentioned, your stock. You have your own stock. I think you get like 40 units of your own stock that you can't do anything with. You can't sell them. But then you can also, during one of your turns, you can use one of your I don't want to call them characters because they're actually they were real people, but the luminary cards, you can use those to buy and trade stock. So I can buy stock in somebody else. I can buy stock in myself. I can also sell stock in the other people that I have. So if I want to reduce their stock value, if I have, say, 2 of Edison, I can sell those stocks and drop Edison's stock. I can also increase his stock by buying it. So like Dave was saying, at one point in the game, toward the end of the game, if you have a bunch of stock, you can absolutely tank somebody by, if I have like 5 units of Edison, I can just sell all 5 units of Edison and drop his stock significantly. It was a really interesting game. I don't know if I would pick it up because I think it was a very nice board game. Like the board was very nice, and if they use like nice card stock for the paper, but I probably would have nobody to play it with. But if I go to another convention that has this game, I'll definitely play it again now that I know the rules. I think it probably took maybe like an hour to play, and this was just based on the first time we played it. So the more you play it, probably game time goes down. Got a couple more packs of Magic from our draft. I want to thank. I think it was his name was Mike also, who gave me those packs. So thank you very much for that. We unfortunately didn't get a finished draft though. So play some of that. Played some Contender, which is Justin Robert Young's new game. You can look it up on Kickstarter as, I think it's like The Contender or The Contender. I backed it the first day that it was out. It's already funded, but it's pretty much a political debate game that's similar to Cards Against Humanity. I played in the print and play beta version that was out for maybe like a month ago, maybe a few weeks ago. But somebody that's a moderator will play the question, and then everybody has their political response cards, and they can play, I think it's any number between 1, 2, or 3 of those. So the subject might be gun control, and then you would play a card that responds, and then your opponent would play a response to that response, and it just gets to be a lot of fun. There were a bunch of people behind us playing it that were just having a great time, and I jumped into a couple games as well. It's going to be awesome. I've already backed the physical version, so that's going to be great when that actually ships, because I have the beta version, but the physical version is going to be a lot bigger. And I also have, if you think there's like various levels you can get it at. There's the basic level, which is the basic game, and then there's one which is the like a different edition that has more, like an extra pack of cards. Because what I do like about this game is that if you want a game that you can, like one that you can play with everybody, they have that as a level. Then they have another level that is that game plus like a mature pack cards that they cut from the other game. So if you want to play it with like more of an adult audience, you can mix these cards into it, which is really cool. So after that, this is my last night there actually. So normally I'll leave on a Monday, like fly in on a Wednesday, leave on a Monday. I stayed until, I only did 4 nights this year just because the room prices were a little more expensive. So I just stayed one last night, but Saturday, technically Sunday morning, we were just hanging out in the lobby outside of the ballroom. I was talking to, again, Joey Image, Justin Robert Young, P. Ray was there. We were just talking about wrestling for a while. Took some awesome photos with with Justin and Joey. We were doing the Wolfpack Click / Bullet Club symbol. We also did the DX crotch chops at one point, so that was a lot of fun. And again, like my highlights this weekend were hanging out with them, doing that wrestling panel, and probably like meeting Chris Metzen, and then doing Current Geek. So my three favorite things from Nerdtacular. Definitely going next year. Always do. It's always a fun time. And I just want to thank thank Scott Johnson and Corinne for being there to put this on every year. It gets bigger and bigger each year, but it also at the same time feels like more intimate because it is a smaller convention. I say smaller as in there's not thousands upon thousands of people there, and it's always nice because if you want to talk to a particular host, if you want to talk to Scott or Brian or anybody there, they're always very accessible. Always willing to take pictures, sign stuff, things like that. I want to thank everybody that also came up to me and wanted photos with me and wanted me to sign things and all that. So it was a blast hanging out. Can't wait to do it again. And that's about it. So Nerdtacular 2015, 2 big thumbs up. If I had more thumbs, I'd give it those as well. Always an awesome time. Definitely going next year. So I want to thank everybody for watching and have a good one.